About a year ago, China announced an unprecedented investment of $225 million in Canada's dairy industry. But now that investment and the hundreds of jobs that could go with it are at risk because China and Canadian dairy are both in U.S. President Trump's crosshairs, and Canada just made a trade deal with the president. The CBC's Janice McGregor is here to explain. Hey, Janice. Nice to see you. This is a great story. Tell me a bit about or remind us, I guess, of the significance of this plant and the investment.
That's right. So come with me a week ago, or more than a week ago now, when we got the new USMCA trade deal. I'm flipping through. It's talking about infant formula. And I cover the dairy industry a lot, and I'm like, Canada doesn't actually export any infant formula. Why have the Americans put this in the deal? And then I'm like, a year ago for the National and World at 6 and a bunch of CBC platforms, I told the story of a Chinese baby formula manufacturer named Feihe that had decided to invest $225 million to build a factory in eastern Ontario. Why? Because they need our cows, they need our goats. They're ending the one-child policy in China, and breastfeeding is not as popular in China as it is here in North America, so they need a lot of formula. And you may remember about a decade ago, China had a big scandal, a food safety scandal, where melamine got in formula and milk. And so the Chinese consumer actually prefers foreign baby formula because they don't trust their own domestic stuff. So here was an opportunity to come into Canada, use our supply managed milk system here, and create large quantities of baby formula. And Canada loved this because usually people kind of talk down the supply management system, all those price and quality controls. But you know who loves it? The Chinese, right? If you're a socialist, you love supply management. So for Canada, it was also a good deal because the thing about baby formula is it uses skim. So we all love our butter, right, as consumers. Once you take the butter out, you're left with a lot of skim milk. What do you do with skim milk? There's not as many uses. Baby formula uses skim milk. So the milk marketing boards here loved the idea of this project. And it was all going swimmingly until the Americans got a bit annoyed.
And what is the impact of the USMCA on that?
Right. So there were two concessions in this trade deal that will affect the future viability of this plant. The first is that it puts export restrictions on infant formula. So it literally sets a threshold, and above and beyond that threshold, you have to pay a big export charge. And I dug into the documents I was looking at a year ago about what this plant was projected to be manufacturing and shipping back to China, because 85% of this formula was destined to go back to China. It wasn't going to stay here. And the thresholds in the trade deal are set at a level, according to the old documents anyway, that were actually below what this plant was hoping to produce at some point. Now, subsequently, I've been told today by some folks in government that whether they've changed their production plans, I'm not sure, but they said that they are comfortable that the production thresholds will allow this plant to continue. But, you know, I think there's some question. They certainly couldn't expand. You certainly couldn't build another one in Canada. They will be kind of capped by this deal. And more significantly, I think, we've been talking a lot about Class 7, the demise of the dairy ingredient pricing strategy in Canada. That will also affect this baby formula plant because the arrangement that was made at the time of the investment was that this skim milk would be provided on the basis of that Class 7 price. And of course, we know in this trade deal, they're going to be doing away with that price, imposing a new pricing formula kind of set by American prices, actually. So safe to assume those prices are going to go up, and that's going to affect probably the bottom line for the Chinese.
And really quickly, before I let you go, what has the reaction been like?
Yeah, so I obviously reached out to Feihe and said, what's going on? Are you going ahead? The spokesperson was quite modest in what they wrote back, just simply saying, look, we're looking at this deal, and, you know, we have no comment at this time. But I think it remains to be seen what's going to happen. You know, they were going to have 200 jobs in that factory, another maybe 1,000 in the area from the construction and the supply contracts and stuff like that. That's a big deal for Kingston. And Kingston's Economic Development Corporation, even a week ago, was tweeting, here's the pictures, the factory's going up, it's all going fine. Is it going fine, though? I think this is one to watch because you know, when I look at it, the math has really changed. This is really an example of changing the rules after the game has started a little bit. But, you know, the government has been very obvious, saying, you know, the Americans right now, they run the table on global formula supplies. They weren't pleased to see this. They wanted to constrain what Canada was doing on this front, and we signed on.
All right. Thanks a lot, Janice.
You're welcome.